people awake Shabbos morning with the lights off. This is quite a challenge. Truth is, Barry sent me a text earlier asking me to please honor his request of speaking 10 minutes. And I said, Barry, after all the efforts you've put into this dinner, I guarantee you I will speak for at least 10 minutes. So Barry, thank you very much for all of those efforts. Rishus Harav, whose Herculean efforts on behalf of this dinner have made it the tremendous success that it has been. Rishus, the board members, the chairman of the board, president, and most importantly, the dinner committee, the Kol HaKol HaKodesh Hazeh, for taking time out of busy schedules to express appreciation, to take note of what we have. It was just a few weeks ago that you know that I escorted the Rav on a trip, a whirlwind of a trip to Eretz Yisrael just for over 24 hours, where we went to represent each of you at the home of Reb Chaim Kanievsky, Zichrono Livracha. And the last leg of that trip, we stopped right before we went to the airport. We stopped at the famed, iconic Ponevezher Yeshiva. Rabbi Feiner went in to learn for a few minutes before we went off to the airport. And I stood outside looking at the structure, looking at the building, looking at those words famously engraved on the walls, Ubehar Tziyoin Tiyeh Lefleita. And I thought about the giant who was the Ponevezher Rav, how he dreamed dreams beyond anything anyone could imagine. And how on the mountain I was standing, he saw a vision that I was now witnessing came to fruition. And what came to mind at the time was a letter that the Ponevezher Rav had penned so many decades ago, where he describes why it was so important for him to reestablish and to call the yeshiva, the Ponevezher Yeshiva, after the yeshiva that had been destroyed in Europe. And the Ponevezher Rav writes, almost endearingly to his yeshiva, Ve'ata yeshiva hakedosha. And you, my beloved yeshiva, Ve'ata yeshiva hakedosha zechusech gedoylo, you have tremendous merit. At nisheres, so much has been destroyed, but at nisheres, you remain v'she'eres loch ba'artzeinu hakedosh. You're still here. You, my beloved yeshiva, you survive, you remain. And I think what the Ponevezher Rav and so many other Rosh Yeshivas were trying to instruct Klal Yisrael by continuing those legacies, Ponevezher, Mir, Bris, is that we, Klal Yisrael, must live up to the dictum of Chazal, Chazal's statement in Tana Devei Eliyahu, Kol echad ve'echad b'Yisrael. Kol echad ve'echad b'Yisrael, every member of Klal Yisrael, Chayav Loimar, is obligated to ask himself that fateful question. Mosai yagiu maisai lemaisai avoisai Avram Yitzchak v'Yaakov. Says the Tana Eliyahu that every member of Klal Yisrael has to ask himself, when will my actions, when will my life, when will that be emulating the life of Maisa, Avoisai, Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov? And at first glance, this is a daunting task, unrealistic. Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, the Amud HaChesed, the self-sacrifice of Yitzchak, the Amud HaTorah of Yaakov Avinu, Mosai, Yagiyu, Maisai, Lamaisai, Avoisai, what is the Ton of Elio asking of me? But I think the operative word is Mosai, Yagiyu, Maisai, Lamaisai, Avoisai, Mosai, Yagiyu. Chazal are not telling us that our actions, our lives have to emulate the lives of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. To ask that our lives mimic the lives of the greatest men that walked the face of earth would be asking too much. But what Chazal do ask of us is that Mosai Yagiyu, your life has to touch their life. You have to be able to see a continuum. It has to be clear that you're picking up where they left off. That you're a link in a greater chain, that you're not just leading your own life. Mosai Yagiyu Maisai Lemaisai Avoisai. Every member of Klal Yisrael has to ask themselves the question, where do I fit into this bigger picture? Being a member of Klal Yisrael doesn't merely mean that I have love for the Satmar Chassid and for the Chiloni taxi cab and driver in Eretz Yisrael. It doesn't merely mean that I could enter a MetLife stadium with hundreds of thousands of people and feel that I'm part of something bigger. But Klal Yisrael is nitzchis. Klal Yisrael has existed from the time of Matan Torah, and we have to feel a part of that as well. We have to feel that we're picking a legacy, we're taking a legacy, we're carrying it, and we're going to deliver it to the next generation. And my life, Yagiyu, it touches the lives of my forefathers. I'm carrying on their legacy. This was the message of the Panavich Arav. This was the message of Tanat Be'Eliyahu. A Jew has to see themselves not only in the bigger picture of the slice of time in which we live, but a Jew has to see himself as connected to previous Doros and Be'ezras Hashem connected to future Doros. Connected to the Jews that lived in the time of the Chavetz Chaim and the Vilna Gaon and the Ramban and the Rashba, Ravina, Ravashi, all the way up to Moshe Rabbeinu. Mosai Yagiyu Maisai L'Maisai Avoisai. So if you ask me what we're celebrating tonight, Rabbi say, we're celebrating a night of Mosai Yagiyu Maisai L'Maisai Avoisai. You know, the other night my wife and I were driving to an event, and my wife turns to me and she says, what is the significance of 100 years? Is it just one more than 99? One less than 101? Is it a marketing ploy? I said, whose team are you on? I didn't even ask you for money. Why are we making a big deal, 100 years, celebrating the shul? I think it's an important question that each of us has to ponder tonight, and I think that we're celebrating tonight the answer to that question. We're celebrating because we all chose to ask ourselves this question. Mosai Yagiyu Maisai L'Maisai Avoisai. That we're part of something bigger. We're part of something broader. We're part of something historic. Our shul, Baruch Hashem, in the last 100 years has weathered many, many shifts and changes amongst Klal Yisrael. And we've managed to adapt and change with the changing demographics. And often it's easier for many of us and easier for many people that stood in these seats, I'm sure, to have said, let me gather a group of 10, 20, 30 like-minded people. Find a house somewhere and begin davening there. But that's not being part of Klal Yisrael. Being part of Klal Yisrael means Mosa Yagiu Maisai L'Maisai Avoisai. To connect ourselves to Klal Yisrael, not of this generation, but of generations gone by, 100 years of members of Klal Yisrael building and working in a shul. That we're continuing work. We're part of something bigger. Only today I learned about the first Rav of the White Shul, a man by the name Rav Dov Ber Kahan, a Talmud of Rabbi Chaim Oizer Grodensky. And it almost brought tears to my eyes. Could you imagine an institution, I'm speaking, darshaning, and I have a connection to Rabbi Chaim Oizer Grodensky. That's Klal Yisrael. And then we transitioned from the Yiddish-speaking Rabbanim to English-speaking Rabbanim, Rav Pelkovitz. And Baruch Hashem, we're graced now with a Rav whose language of Avas Yisrael and Avas Torah resonates the world over. But we're part of something bigger. We're part of something larger. We're a chain in a great, glorious link. Let us not be limited. Let us not detach ourselves because of small frustrations. Let us continue to work hard. Let us celebrate Masa Yagiu Maisai L'Maisai Avoisai, that we have asked ourselves that question. And we are committed to that cause. Tonight, we celebrate that. Tonight, we look back in the past and we thank generations of Jews who gathered together in 1922 in the building of commerce in Far Rockaway. 1922, could you imagine, would they dream what America or Jewry would become and the furnace that Europe would become? Could they dream at the time that we would be sitting here so grateful to them? But that's what it means to be part of Klal Yisrael. It means to look at them and thank them. Gain inspiration and humility and realize that what we continue to build will be needed and necessary for the next 100 years. Well beyond what we can imagine. This chain continues to grow. Be'ezras Hashem, we now hope that we are laying that foundation upon which the final kiyum of the words of Chazal, Asidin Botei Kneisiyu Shebebavel, the shuls and Chutz La'aretz will be brought to Eretz Yisrael, realizing our ultimate kiyum of our ultimate purpose, our ultimate mission. And this chain finally meets the opposite end, and the circle is closed. Mosa Yagiu Maisai L'Maisai Avoisai. Thank you all for coming.